this program does have a direct economic impact. We put together a model that just clearly demonstrates how a program like this puts money back into the local community. So as opposed to tax dollars, our tax dollars, and our donations and our time, it's a way for the kids to participate in the program, to have a vehicle to give back to community. So people tend to give back to communities where they come from. I'm a college graduate. My brother's a college graduate. You're a college graduate. We've all given back to the communities we come from. So we need to create more people who have the ability to give back. So that's really when we talk about the economic impact. So in the model we put together, we had to look at a couple of things. We had to first look at what does it mean to be a high school dropout? What's the cost of society versus a college graduate? So we looked at the high school dropout, and we said a high school dropout, and looking at statistics and those type of things, a high school dropout typically makes about $17,000 a year. Just to be above the poverty line, you have to make $24,000 a year. So you're already $7,000 in the hole. And that means you require supportive services, you're requiring other things to get by. In addition to that, high school dropouts, there's a direct correlation association with crime and crime prevention. So if you look at per individual that's a high school dropout, there's an associated cost that we've been able to pull some numbers together on based on some other statistics and programs that demonstrate a $30,000 a year cost. $26,000 a year cost for crime prevention. So when you look at putting the whole thing together, it's costing society about $30,000 plus a year per individual who's a high school dropout. If you just graduate high school, the average high school graduate salary is about $26,000 a year. So you're $26,000 plus. There are still supportive services and needs and crime prevention associated with high school dropouts and not further education. So that number of that $26,000 a year of crime prevention still is a trigger, but realistically, we can wipe that out. That high school graduates put about $2,000 a year in society, which is why we're always talking about getting kids to graduate, and that's why people in society are always talking about that, because it's important. But that college graduate is making about $56,000 a year, $56,000 a year. Not requiring any supportive services, actually contributing to the tax, to our taxes and payments in society. And that college graduate is actually also a purchaser, so they're buying homes and they have credit cards and they're buying cars. So that college graduate actually puts about $120,000 a year back into society. So if you look at that, if that is the first component, you know, the difference of an individual based on their education back into society, you're looking at a high school dropout that's a draw of about $30,000 a year versus a college graduate who puts $120,000 plus back in the local economy. So then you have to go back and look at, well, what does that look like generationally? Well, again, looking back in the statistics and polls, high school dropouts tend to have more kids. I was shocked to realize that, but tend to have more kids, in total about 3 to 4 kids average. Whereas a college graduate will have 1 to 2 kids in their family units, and high school graduates are somewhere in between. Well, if you look at who we are as individuals, you tend to create people who are like yourself. So if you're a college graduate, you're going to have kids who are going to be college graduates or successful. If you're a high school dropout, education probably isn't as important, so they tend to create more people like themselves. So 3 generations down, you could have a family unit of high school dropouts that have a draw in society. If you look at that original number of 30,000, 3 generations down, that single family unit, and we do find this community, we've seen that as potential even for some of the kids that we serve here. That's a $300,000 per year cost on society for that high school dropout and their successive family units. Whereas a college graduate with 1 or 2 kids puts about $1.2 million a year back into the local economy from where they come from. So there's a big difference. $300,000 draw, tax monies, donations, support services for that family unit versus a million plus for college graduates, somewhere thereabouts. If you look at this whole component and what we're trying to do here, we're starting out with 50 kids in AES. And we have to look at those kids. If they weren't in our program, would they have graduated? So we have to really look at the graduation rates and those type of things. Well, the New York Times put together a great poll. They put together statistics from various sources. And the national dropout rate for kids from disadvantaged communities is 29%. So if we look at the 50 kids we served today, we would say that means eight to nine of them would probably be dropouts. And if you look at that family unit and the potential for those 8 or 9 at $300,000 for 8 to 9, that's almost $2.4 million a year draw from society if these kids didn't graduate and we're on the path that the statistics say they're heading down. And where's that money come from? It comes from donations, again, taxes, you and I support, what have you. But when you look at what AES is doing, just getting kids to graduate high school, and if that's all we did, that high school graduating and the successful family units would put about $2 million a year back in society a year, maybe a little less. But we can get them to college. Those kids would put about $23 million a year to $30 million a year back in society. I'm using a lower number. Again, in looking at this model and putting it all together, this is we did a benchmark, and we assumed we were 75% correct in our assumptions. So the $23 million is a conservative number. But even if we were only 10% correct, our kids that we're supporting here today would put $2 million a year back into their society that they come from. So why was this important to put together this model? Why are we doing this? What was driving us to look at it this way? Well, we actually saw this model in reverse. It's the prison model in reverse, and that's why we said we can make a positive